hold hands. You can press them. We really appreciate you being here and to let us help in any way we can to make the start of your year the best it can be. And thanks for entrusting us with your children or teens. So this is very informal, every year it kind of, we look up, we think, okay, what might be the questions people ask, what are the most important things you might want to know, and so we'll talk through some of them, but at any time you're like, but how does that work, and what do I do about this? And if you have anything specific about your child, I'm happy to stick around and talk just about them, so that you don't have to talk about them on the video here. So, but at any point, feel free to interrupt or ask or make a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So, okay, down arrow. Well, there's our picture from the start of the year, which is we're super fortunate to have, I think, the most incredible co-workers on the planet. I think we had one teacher change over this year, which is also incredible in a time like we're in. So we're very, very lucky to have the people we work with. So I'd like to always introduce the people here. And so we have one of our teachers here right now, and then we have our cupola staff I'm going to introduce. But first, let's get an idea of who's in the room. Early ed families or nurturing families. That's the biggest number usually because it's the most open spaces. Thank you. 6 to 9 year olds. Okay. So you raise your hand again. Yeah. 9 to 12 year olds. 12 to 14 year olds. Islands, you'll hear them say. Islands has a big meeting next week. So if you haven't seen the information about that, you want to do Islands, Parenting and Islander, I think is the name of it. And what about Woods, 14 to 18? Okay, great. So, those names all mean something. We'll talk about that in a minute. It just gives us an idea of what's in the room. But introduce yourself, guys.
Hi, I'm a teacher in 6 to 9 studio. I've been here since 2020. I came here from out of state just to work here. So it's going really well. I grew up with Montessori. I was in public education and then Montessori. And so it's super neat. Never thought I would do it, but now I'm teaching it. So I'm all about it.
And one of our oldest grandchildren is in Tendra's studio, which is where she is. You can go ahead and down there. And then these are some of the people that you might need, besides the teaching staff that you need to ask questions to, is the people we call the cupola, that thing that juts out of the roof at the entrance of the school. The architectural name for it is called the cupola. And so we just, on purpose and because we can, we decided to rethink why we call what when we moved into this building. So instead of saying the front office or the principal's office or any of that, we just said the cupola. And so, oftentimes we'll say to the children, can you go up to health services, which is at the curved desk? And they're like, what? At first, and then, there's a curved desk that you just all pass when you came in. That's under that cupola that we all are sitting in with windows that kind of point out towards the middle of the building. And so is Glenn out there somewhere?
He's still letting families in.
All right. Brandon, go ahead.
Hi, I'm the Administrative Services Coordinator. Most of you already know me.
Come right here so they can see, stand in the middle and do this.
Most of you already know me through enrollment, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have, but I basically support Barbara and Glenn and all the wonderful things they do at the school.
Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the finance coordinator. I've had 2 kids graduate from here, and
payroll and HR and AP, and she acts like, just do this. Great. Kelly.
I'm Kelly. I've been here 13 years now. Both my kids graduated from here. I do attendance, I help with finance, house services, enrollment, you name it, and I'll help you with it. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Paige.
okay, well, I'll support you.
It's okay.
I'm Paige. I am the Health Services Coordinator. I work at the curb desk with Kelly. I write the health plans, and I help your kiddos if they get sick at school or if they get hurt. Yeah. Oh, I also have 2 kids that go here. I have one, actually they're both in 6 to 9 now. One's in Tundra, and the other one is and Desiree.
And she works with our nurse practitioner who helps to oversee our health plans at Fort Taylor Thomas. She works with Floyd County Health Department. And so you see those flags up there. Paige does the changing of the flags, and we have an air quality adjustment. So.
Yeah, whenever I talk to groups, I get really nervous and just forget everything that I do. So
We can all fill it out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paige.
thank you.
Glenn, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Glenn Fondren, many hats, assistant director, family liaison, support technology, enrollments, safety, all kinds of fun stuff. So, but I'm your go-to if you ever need anything. I can direct you to the right location. Barbara and I actually started Community Montessori. Been married 33 years, and I told her I'd help her get the school started. Give her a couple years, and 26 years later, I'm still here. So yeah, really.
Death on the bug.
Yeah, I did. It really is an incredible place, and I want to welcome everyone to CM, and look forward to partnering with you and your learner. So.
Last but not least, Portland.
Hi, I'm Portland. I am brand new. I think this is like my third week at Community Montessori, but I am the new community ambassador. So think like communication, social media. I'm here recording this event tonight, things like that. Right? I mean, pretty much anything that involves the wider community, like you.
And we used to, like many schools did, had a large parent council of things, and after the pandemic, like everyone rethought, how do I want to spend my time? So, we still have a large group of parents that like to get involved, but we don't have kind of a PIT, what we call a PIT council right now that helps to do the volunteering. So Portland also is navigating through that, helping people to get into however they would like to stay connected. We had, I think it was a new family this year that is helping with the pond.
Yep.
So that was amazing. They actually do pond work on their own business. Are you here tonight? No, what you look like. But anyway, so they are treating the pond. They put a new fountain in for us, and so sometimes people are just like, "This is the thing I do. Do you need it?" And we're like, "Yes, please help." So we really appreciate that too. And then, so the staff directory, you can see all the rest of the staff. This will be online, so you can look at it that way. You can go ahead and page down. The two most important members of our community, if you haven't met them or your children haven't told you about them, Presley and Tico. So they're two of our 5 dogs at home. And these are the two that have been trained to be here. And so Presley is 13 years old. They're both rescues, and we think Tico is about 8. And so they get lots of love during the day. Kids come in and read to them or just pet them. I had a couple of young people that said today they're going to steal them and take them home. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Presley is in his elder years of his life, so we're constantly thinking about, he's very kind and gentle, but he has things that don't work so well, his hips and so forth. So hopefully he'll make it through this school year as well. Okay. So, one of the things Portland, like I already shared, helps you to get connected. And sometimes we have families that say, I would love to do X, or can we put together a Y? And so she's your person to help to brainstorm and figure out if there's some things like that we want to put together. We like to do things that are pretty organic to the community instead of things that are just, this is what we always do, da-da-da-da. So one was talking a little bit about, the start of our school, and actually our house was just a half mile down the road, and we were looking for what we wanted for our own children, who were 2, 3, and 6 months old at the time, and I learned about Montessori education, and I thought, why don't we have a Montessori school here in our community? And there were so many that were in the peripheral area, and so I went to our local school superintendent. How do we get a Montessori school here? And he said, oh, do you know how expensive Montessori schools are? And I'm like, no, I don't. But he said, if you find the money, I'll help you get it started, kind of thing. And so I started looking for how that could happen. I learned about charter school laws, and Indiana did not have that law at the time, but it was intriguing to me because I thought it was the best of both worlds. maybe you do too, because it's like a free public choice of a school, and it's still independent, you know. So we started in 1998 with 59 children. Our 2 children were there at the time, and so before that, we developed a nonprofit organization and a group of volunteer board members that are community leaders. And then I asked them to hire me to be the school leader. And I said I had 2 main goals. One was to add an age level every year through high school, and the second was to eventually be tuition free. So personally, I lobbied for the charter school law in Indiana. I got real close to a lot of legislators that were in that same mode. And when we started in 1998 as a private school, we still kept going up every year. I did to try to, promote the thought process of charter schools, which I think get a really bad rap in our world. But I think it's just the right recipe. And lots of public school people that I know, traditional public school people, are like, I wish we could be a charter school. We could design our own environment and so forth, and how we're going to teach young people. So I do think that there's some really positives that have taught to our traditional publics too. So when the charter school law passed, to much of our surprise in 2001, we went to Ball State University, who was the first university to say, okay, we'll be an authorizer. And over a few weeks in the winter, and about 5 parent volunteers, we wrote our charter about this big and said, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we'll know we're successful. And we've been chartered by Ball State University since that time. So we're really fortunate to have a partnership with them, that they let us do the things we feel are important, and then we do lots of reporting with them and show them what we do and how we're helping learners grow and get feedback from you guys, etc. So that's how we show our accountability to you and to them. Our own 2 daughters were in the school when we started, and our oldest was in the first graduating class. And as we kept adding a grade level each year, that was super cool to see that whole process come on in and start. And now our oldest has 4 children who are now also all on the campus, which is super cool to see our 6-year-old twin that are the oldest of our grands, and then a 3-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So it's really neat to see the full circle, and have the peers and co-teachers and co-workers around us that are all helping each other with our own kids. So a focus on the whole child. So you won't hear us talking about our goal is to get all the academics, only the academics. That's the main purpose of that. Of course, we believe as Montessorians that we watch for the right time. So we don't try to force a child to read necessarily, but we give them all the tools so that the goal is that they have the moment. If that doesn't happen, we know just the right kind of interventions that we can use to support them in that natural acquisition of learning, instead of making it feel forced, coerced, or painful that maybe some of us have memories too. So you can see there's 8 different constructs that we work with young people: intellectual, social, emotional, ethics, wellness, creativity. School success is that kind of testing component. And then aesthetics, how we find the beauty in things. And we have about 560 infants through high school. Any questions right now about any of that? Okay, keep us going. Okay. Would anyone like to read this quote by Marie Montessori? You feel so moved? Do you? Okay. Sure, she says. You pointed me out in front of the whole group.
Observe the child. Do not intervene. This approach requires a lot of patience and discipline, but it is absolutely necessary. From those observations, curate and prepare an environment best suited for his developmental stage and interests. By Maria Montessori.
Thank you. I think she was one of the most intelligent, thought-provoking humans in the 19th century, 20th century. She was alive, through the 1900s. And we continue as an educational force to look back at her knowledge to help us to know why we do what we do now. You know, one of the things that she said that I thought was so fascinating is that, you know, like at the time that she became a doctor, I could talk about her for this whole session. She became a doctor and had a lot of really unique, interesting positions. But at the same time, she was going through this process of figuring out what was her next step. She started to get into education, and we were creating automobiles like the Model T. And when you see what was happening with the Model T or the first automobiles, at first they would build one car all the way through. Like, you know, this person would do this, and then they would do this to it, and then they would do this, and it would take like a whole day to build a car. And then they realized, like, if they put it on an assembly line and had this group of people doing this, and this group doing this, and this group doing this, they could build like 50 cars in a day, right? And so as our culture looked at that model, they said, we could do the same thing with kids. You know, in kindergarten we would put this in, at first grade we would put this in, etc. And Maria Montessori thought that was blasphemy. She could not believe that we would look at children like a widget or a car, right? And yet, we're still there in some degree, but she really believed that the focus of school should be about the individual human and not about, you know, trying to pour in information like they were empty vessels. She believed that every child had within them everything they need. And it was the adult's role to prepare the environment, both socially, emotionally, academically, etc., and watch that natural process of acquisition of knowledge happen. And then a parent will say, really, Algebra 2? And I'll say, well, you know, firstly, we still have to prepare the environment, right? It doesn't mean it automatically goes in, but the prepared environment that's most important for things that might be challenging for some, like Algebra 2 might be for some, is that they feel okay about questioning. They feel okay about asking what doesn't make sense. They feel okay about taking a risk, trying something new, right? And so when you have an environment that's not like the adult is the evaluator all day long and the child's role is to impress the evaluator and show them that they can regurgitate back exactly what they heard, and instead you have an environment that's collaborative, right? From a 3-year-old to a 13-year-old, right? So that when they say, you know, oh, that's a B, and it's definitely not a B, I can say to that 3-year-old, you are working on letters. Like, I don't have to tell them that that's right or wrong at 3 years old, because I'm looking at them not as, is it right or wrong, and I evaluate everything they do, but as the developmental stage they're in. And so what you'll hear some tonight, and if you come back for another workshop, a substitute volunteer workshop, we get a little deeper into that, you know, more specific part of learning. We're here to really try to understand what they understand so we can keep guiding them towards whatever's next for them. And hopefully in that process, right, they have those aha moments where they're excited, we're interested, we're excited together. They don't need me to say, good job, you did this well, because they already feel it inside, right? And that's what we're after. We want them to have that intrinsic motivation that helps them to feel a sense of groundedness, right? And happiness, right? Their own happiness, not because they get it from somebody else. And so we'll talk some more about that when we get through. Any questions, comments that have come up for anybody? All right, if you have anything, thank you. You're on top of that. School should be an extension of home. Home should be an extension of school. Now, you won't hear that at each educational place that you might take your child to, but that's our huge belief, right? Is this partnership that happens when we're both working in that same way, right? So if home looks really different than school, it's something for you and your co-partner in parenting to reflect on, right? That, you know, that can be really confusing for a young person. And when you came, you know, you went to the tour or virtual tour, when you try to figure out if this was the right place for your family, we had a lot of those conversations in that dialogue too. And so we'll talk a little bit about what we believe is important here so that you can start reflecting on what things you might want to do that would help to be consistent at home. So model the behavior you want to see with your child. Yeah, we all say, oh yeah, we all know that. I shouldn't like use profanity in front of my child, and etc. The first time I met one of my favorite people that I've worked with in my life, we went to McDonald's before we were going, this was 25 years ago, before we were going to a workshop together. And she said, are you going to get that, meatless Big Mac? And I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to get. She goes, can I have your meat? I said, you're vegetarian. She goes, no, I'm just vegetarian around my children because I don't want them to eat a lot of meat. I'm like, what? But that was, that was her starting point. This was their belief as raising their children, but she wasn't quite ready to give it all up yet, so she just did it outside of their view. And so, trying to have no double standards when we say to our child, like, don't have your tablet at the dinner table, and then here we sit on our phone, right? Or we say to our child, like, when we're finished eating, we put our things away, we wash our dishes off, we put them in the dishwasher, and then I leave mine on the table, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm busy, and I was doing this, and I was doing that. They start to get this feeling that, say what you say, do what you say, but not what you do, right? And it changes that behavior. That's really what we try to do too. If we ask children, not to sit on a table, then we don't sit on the table. We don't say, well, I'm the adult, I'm the teacher, I get to do that. Like, we're in a collaborative environment, and so we work together in that collaborative community, and we negotiate with each other. It's just not all the buck stops. It doesn't mean sometimes we don't have hard conversations, we don't set boundaries. Those things happen too. But we also can be in an environment where we can be respectful and kind and courteous and treat each other the way we want to be treated. In 26 years, I've never, ever heard a teacher scream at a child. And there's not many people in education that can say that, unfortunately. But, like, we ask them not to scream at us, and that's not perfect, but we also, follow through with that as well. When you think about discipline, our goal is inner discipline. And so that might be a new term for you. And so instead of them trying to please us or make us happy, or if you've ever seen your child like do something when they know you're watching and do it differently when you're not watching, like, those are ways, and it's developmental in lots of ways, but we want them to do it because it's the right thing to do, right? And so it's internal for them instead of external. Like, they don't know that they're going to get 5 more minutes of outside time if they do this or that. Instead, we just talk about, like, we'll know that we can get outside when everybody's ready, right? So let's help each other. It's not about who started this or who finished that. It's like, let's help one another to get it to that place. We don't have in trouble. For new kiddos, especially in that 8 to 13-year-old age, it's a hard one to help for them to understand, because we'll say things like, I was talking with a new young person today with one of the teachers, and as the teacher left to go back to the room and we were going to continue the conversation, she said, listen, you're not in trouble. We're just here helping each other and helping you have a conversation. It's okay. Everything's fine. You're not in trouble. And he goes, phew, I thought for sure you were going to go call my mom right now. And then I wouldn't be able to do this or that or the other, right? And so instead we were like, we want to help you be successful. And you seem to be really overwhelmed when everyone was moving around getting ready for lunch. And if that's true, we want you to know what you can do during that time. So I said, you can ask to come see the dogs. You can go in the Harmony Room. You can go in the Peace Commons. We have all these places that young people can go to self-advocate for. Or down here is the Serenity Room, the Tranquility Room, the Woods. There are all kinds of places that we want to help them to feel a sense of choice, empowerment. And with that comes inner discipline, right, in that same way. Encouragement instead of praise. Not many schools, not many traditional schools will say this, but we believe in it, and we really work hard to walk the walk with it. And so when a child does something really powerful and they're excited, we mirror their excitement. They're like, oh, I put all the numbers together from 1 to 100. I'm like, oh my gosh, what, you did all of that? Did you do it this morning? Did you start it yesterday? They're like, I did it this morning. I'm like, wow, you did it this morning? Like, we're having this genuine, like, interested conversation about it. I don't have to say, good job, Benny, you know, like you've done it. Look everybody at what Benny has done. Now we've got Barry over here going like, oh, never get that done, you know, like then they're all comparing each other. Now no longer do we have a collaborative environment, we have a competitive environment that goes against each other. And so we find, especially in education, this works best when they feel a member of a community instead of that some are higher and some are lower than the others. So, you know, we encourage, we celebrate with them. We just don't want them to think that their joy comes from the adult. That their joy should come from themselves, right? So that's what we're after. Woo! Those were two big ones. Anyone have any thoughts or comments about that? You're like, I'm not going to say that out loud. Anybody wonder how that might work or doesn't work? Or tried it at home? Yeah. And the last screen, and this will all go on our blog, and you'll be able to click on it, is a whole list of Montessori parenting books. One of the ones I love the best is called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. And it just talks about, like, you know, sometimes we can even think about it if our life partner is, you know, punishing us because we forgot the keys, or they're like, good job, and you're like, stop being so condescending. Like, we feel that as adults, right? And so we try to do the same thing that we would with children. So I've got lots of books at the end of this slideshow that you can look at too. Purposeful developmental independence. I was working with our 1.5, she'll be 2 in the end of September, grandchild, and I said, do you want to put your pants on? And she's like, pants on. And here she was, fishing her foot through this pant, and I thought, wow, you know, like she's learned so much by having older siblings, and I didn't say, you have to put them on by yourself, you got to do it by yourself. Instead, you know, I said, do you want to put this foot in, or do you want help? And she goes, I'll put it in, right? And so whatever is the right level of independence. For a 16-year-old, that could be, do you want me to sit beside you while you call your first internship option on your paper? I'll sit beside you if you want. You know, we can write out a script together. You know, you write the first sentence and I'll help you with the second sentence, right? So we want to help them to have that level of independence. When Glenn and I, our daughters, who are in their 30s now, were young, they had their own identification card. Card. They signed themselves in and talked to the person at the doctor's office about why they were here. You know, like those were developmental independence things that they could do. And it wasn't like we were forcing or giving them, you know, a popsicle if they would do it. We just helped to prepare the environment for them to do that. They made their own lunches, we gave them a budget, they went out and bought food once a week. We're not perfect with that. Sometimes Sunday would come too soon. It's not perfect, right? But really trying to think about what is the right level of independence for each individual child, wherever they are with that process. Self-regulation, beside and with instead of for and to. Does anyone have an idea of how you've helped your child with self-regulation before? Maybe emotional self-regulation. Anybody have anything to share about that? No one has any kiddos that are struggling emotionally. Check.
Yeah, very hyper, yes. But I guess we actually went through one patient here last year, about 6 months, very helpful. And one of them, I think that works for her, yeah, just giving her the space to go and have her lifetime. However, you know, because maybe we're not helping in that moment, or maybe she just needs to by herself for that. I think it's a lot. Right. For her to trust.
Yeah. And just demystifying what they can do sometimes is just a big help because they feel like they can't do anything right? You know, so we will certainly want to help kids to feel empowered by their choices and not feel like imprisoned by that. And so things that we do, we utilize a lot of positive discipline techniques. So for example, if a child, you know, can get frustrated, be anxious, feel, a lot of big emotions when things happen. We might make what's called a wheel of choice, kind of like a pizza pie with 4 or 8 different slices on it, and say, let's write down things you can do when you get frustrated. And they might say, take deep breaths. Okay, take deep breaths. What else can you do, right? And so them going to that, maybe it's on the wall, maybe it's laminated on a table, and choosing which thing they want to do helps them to self-regulate better than, sometimes we'll go back to the way we were parented, which may not be the same way you're parenting. And like, that's enough. You don't treat me like that. And does it ever make it better? It might make us feel better in the moment, but oftentimes it doesn't change the situation. So instead, we try to help them to self-regulate. You are frustrated. You are having big emotions, and you are always welcome to have any emotion you want. I will not let you hit my body. Hitting my body is not going to be an option, but we can look at your wheel of choice and see what is an option. And so moving through that direction. Conscious parenting. If you've ever seen heard of Dr. Shefali Sabari, she wrote the book Conscious Parenting, I think is the name of it. And so there's a lot of books about conscious parenting, but it starts with us recognizing what's happening. It starts with that reflection, and so instead of doing the same thing that we were done to us, that autopilot thing, you will not talk to your mother that way, right? So instead of that unconscious type parenting, conscious parenting would be to give myself a minute. I talk a lot to children about their frontal lobes and their amygdalas. The amygdala is like the reptilian fight or flight brain. The frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex, is the thinking part. And so if a child is impulsive at times or has a hard time, not flashing out at someone or saying something that might be unkind, I'm like, ooh, that was an amygdala reaction there. They're like, which part was the amygdala again? I'm like, oh, that's that part back here, way back underneath here, that little bump that you might have on the back of your head. And it's inside your brain. And so there's a time when we really need our amygdala. If you and I were playing Frisbee together and you threw me a Frisbee, go ahead. If I didn't just catch it, it would hit me right in the face. I'm like, so if you're throwing me a Frisbee and I'm like, ooh, here comes a, that there's a time to use the amygdala. The amygdala needs to have those quick thinking. If a lion ran in here real quick or something very violent was happening, we want the amygdala to help us to move. But most of the time we live in a different space that we're not in crisis, that we can use our conscious thought process to think about, I am an adult right now. I don't have to be, pulled and frustrated by this 3-year-old that is, really doing the developmental thing that they would do, which is defining their own independence in ways that is pushing my buttons. So what I can do is think about it in a way that makes them, feel supported instead of feel like they are in trouble or that they're reacting to my frustration. And so I try to stay very calm. Conscious parenting philosophy would be, etc. Thoughts or comments about any of that? Did you want to share what you were thinking about?
Yeah, just how do they cope with that for you? Because there are times when you, even as a little kid, you experience failure.
Yes.
So what do you cope with for, how do you help them advocate for themselves and overcome failure that's self-induced, they tried something and it didn't work and they feel like they failed.
Right. So, if you were to sit in one of the 6 to 9-year-old environments, for instance, you would see children trying new things all day long. And half the time, it doesn't work out the way they hoped it would, right? And so when you have an environment that's not trying to make everyone, we're not trying to make everyone feel good all the time. We're not trying to give all of them trophies. But what we are trying to do is to say, you are capable of working through it. It is okay for you to feel frustrated. It's okay for you to be even angry at this. What do you want to do to help yourself overcome that. So, it's more like that. And so when they do have a moment where they've done this whole test tube with these little test tubes and beads, 6-figure division problem, and they turned over the card and their answer is not accurate to this answer, and they're like, this took me 15 minutes. You're like, well, you could see if you could figure out and do it again, or you can wait and try it again tomorrow, So there's not this whole, like, they have to keep doing something over and over and over until it's right. We want them to think more about the process of learning than we do just the product, right? Does that make sense? Does that help at all? Thank you, Jenny. Help your child self-advocate, set personal boundaries, and show respect and care for others. And that could be hard for some of us too, like they're saying, I don't want to brush my teeth, I think that's a boundary I can set for myself. And you're like, so there's things that you can set a boundary for, and then, parents are also part of health and safety. And this is a health thing, and just like we've talked before about shots, most people don't want to get shots, but it's what our family believes, and so you separate those pieces, but you say what you can advocate for is when you want to brush your teeth. You can brush your teeth right after dinner, or right after you have your dessert or whatever, or you can brush your teeth right before you go to bed. Those are things you can self-advocate for. If you don't like what I put into our routine at night, you can advocate for something different, right? So we give them an appropriate and developmental choice. All right, thank you. Things that might look different here. Some parents will say, my child said they want to go here because you don't have homework. And so they're so tired of homework. Well, part of that is true. In the elementary and early ed environment, we're not sending home papers of things that they have to do at home for homework. In the teens program, we treat them closer to adults. And so sometimes they choose to socialize more during the day, and they have more work they need to get done at home. And sometimes that's our part too, right? If we work at a place where we have tasks that have to be completed, and we spent too much time socializing with our coworkers, we might have to take some of that home. So it's similar in that same way. But what we really want families to know is that you can support work at home every single night. That can be a value that you can share. That's a part of your culture. It doesn't have to just be a thing given by school. So one developmental component might be for one child that they're reading to the younger sibling. I had this young child say to me today that their responsibility at home is to help their younger sibling get their pajamas on at night, to get their water ready for night. Like they had these certain amount of roles. For some children, that's like no big deal. They love to do it, right? It may not be their work at home because they're already doing it. But for another child, it could be their work at home because it's so difficult for them. And for that, child that is already kind of proficient at that process, their work at home might be to take an inventory of the soups that we have in the cabinet and make a list of the soups that, if we have less than 3 soups, then put it on the list that we're going to get from the grocery, right? And so that could be a thing that, so they're doing it in a functional way. They're using their numbers, they're using their letters, maybe they're 7, they're tracing or however they're going to do it. We make it functional for them. And so we really encourage, you to help them to get into a system of working at home. I'm going to say this about 15 times through this, so just, you can just make fun of me if you want. But we're having this talk this year called a Parent Tech Talk. And this year we started using pouches, as some of you know, in the teens program for their cell phones. And I can tell you that I only had one parent that ever verbalized that they were against it to any of us. Everybody else was like, thank you. Like at least they won't be used it there. But what am I supposed to do at home? And I'm like, let's get together, let's all talk together and share that. And it starts not when they're here at the teens. It starts when they're 5 or 6 on their tablet or younger than that, right? And how we set up those parameters and how we do that. So I hope that each of you choose to join, monthly or bi-monthly, and come and share and learn from each other, because it's, if you're looking at the current research right now in the book that just came out by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation, looks at a lot of research and that we're rewiring children's brains by the technology, that they're in front of too many hours in the day. And so, after we kind of dug, deep into the research and started really thinking about it, we were like, we swallowed the pill, we've got to do something now about it. So that's going to be on the first Tuesday of the month. Go ahead.
I was just going to tell you a funny story about our youngest daughter, who's 28. If you get them in line to work at home and do those things like Barbara said, they'll come home and they'll clear out your refrigerator with all the expired food. She comes and visits us, and next thing I know, she's like, "Do you know this expired?" Like,
oh, great, it's coming over. Let's get all the expired.
Casey's coming over. Let's clear out our refrigerator. So it's just one of those funny things we kind of work with her at a young age to do things. So.
We communicate a lot at this school. We send a lot of emails, and we're really not trying to harass you. We're just trying to help you be informed. And we want you to be a part of the community and want you to know things. So, if you could take turns who's reading the emails and sharing, but we really encourage you to try to read them and, get involved in whatever way fits for your family. The multi-age environment, so that is a Montessori philosophy piece. Sometimes parents will say, well, other schools do that. Well, oftentimes other schools have multi-age environments. They might have a kiddo that's really high at the kindergarten age level and a lower first grade level, and that's what they multi-age. And on purpose, Maria Montessori said, we learn from each other as much as we learn from a teacher or the material. And so on purpose, when you have 3 to 6-year-olds in an environment, which is 3 and 4-year-olds plus kinder, or you have 6 through 9-year-olds, which would be first, second, and third levels, or 4th, 5th, and 6th levels, or down the teens program, 7th and 8th levels are an environment, and 9th and 12th levels are an environment. And so they stay, the 9th and 12th levels, from in the same studio for 4 years, with those 2 advisors that really get to know them and say, like, wait a minute, you turned in this writing, I've seen you do much better than this. What's going on? I really wanted to go to this party, and my mom said I had to have all my work caught up, so I just turned in not my best work. Okay, so what's your plan now? Because I thought your goal was to get an exceeds expectations on this work, and you didn't hit that mark. So I'm curious what your plan is. I was going to ask the advisor if I could have an extension. That's what adults do, right? So we want to help them to be that adult-like person. They bring their own lunches, as you already know, and a snack. And there's different parameters and different studios. And believe me, when our daughter tells us, like, everybody does something different. Like, we don't have a lot of, like, everyone does the same things. There's parameters that studios can make that are a little bit different than somebody else's. And so just know, same way with birthdays. If you're not sure how birthdays would work or if they even do birthdays in your child's studio, just ask if they haven't already shared that with you. But those things might be a little bit different. A lot of the early and elementary studios, children bring in a picture of each year of their life, and they hold it, and they hold the earth, and they, as the earth revolves around the sun, they walk around the sun, and the children will say the months of the year, January, February, March. And so there's this very concrete picture of how a year happens, right? And how we get 1 year older. And so it really is a beautiful thing. Oftentimes parents are invited in to be part of that. And so just ask if you're not sure. Prepared environment, so who might go to the sub-volunteer workshop later this month? Love it. And we want you, and we need you. Each environment is a little bit different. And so if you were subbing or if you're volunteering, one of the things you might be doing is making the room prepared. Now, yes, the children clean the room and they all have responsibilities. And sometimes it's more work for the adult afterwards. And sometimes it's less, right, as they're building those skills. And so, there are always things that need to happen, vacuuming and sharpening pencils and dusting and cleaning and those kind of things. So we work really hard at making the environment look and feel like a place that is well respected. About the drop-off and pick-up, which can be a little tedious at this time of the year. Does anyone have questions or any comments about that process? Now that you've lived through it a little bit? Yeah.
We have ours starting Thursday.
Okay.
She's 3, and I saw her not today out of the car. She's in
Great question. I mean, usually families just unbuckle them while they're in line. And so you just might have another 20 or 30 feet to drive up once it's your turn. And so when they're, when they get there and you're stopped and you're in park and they open the door, then they can get out on their own and grab their lunchbox, etc. So I don't know how old your child is. 3, yeah. So it's a little bit harder, maybe. I don't know what your 3-year-old's like at first. And then they get used to that, our 2.5-year-old is still backwards, she, or not 2.5, she's not quite 2 yet. She couldn't do that process by herself, right? But, again, that developmental piece. And so that's oftentimes when they'll reach around and unbuckle once they get stopped. So either way. Or if the child's, we don't want to make the child feel like the stranger's coming in and unbuckling them in a very intimate way. They are in their seat sometimes, so sometimes that part works better. Did you want to add something to that? That was your question.
And I'm visual, so I'm really big too, so it is over on that side.
It is, yep. That entrance on that end. So you'll start at that end of the building and there'll be cones out when parents come up. So there's like 4 cars at a time.
Something we've noticed, so this is his first week, and
Exhausted.
But when he's got out of the car in the morning, I feel like there should be a little more direction on where they should go. If he got out of the car and kind of the advisor just walked away, he didn't really know where to go until they realized, hey, he doesn't know where he's at.
Yeah.
So that could be something to pass on to the young ones, especially if you don't know if it's their first day or not, on exactly where to go.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, we can't tell who's their first day because some children look really confident.
Well, that's what I'm like, that's not all, there's so many going on. I know that was starting last week.
That's right.
And then we were like, oh no, just to go in the door, just go to the door.
Right. And so you'll see that there's quite a few of us out there that for sure communicate to us like, hello. They stood there, but we really are waiting to see because if we say, what's your name, what's your studio, each time it's going against the independence and self-regulation.
Right.
So we're trying to kind of watch what they're going to do. Sometimes when I've gone up to a child that looks like they don't know where they're going, they're like, I'm going to a list. I'm like, I'm sorry. I did not realize that you know exactly where you're going. And so it is a little tricky, but thank you for sharing that. That's important.
Would you prefer the drive up as opposed to pull it up and walking across?
It really depends on the child.
Okay.
If the child's having separation or that kind of thing, we encourage you to stay in the drive in the car because that's usually easier, not always. But for some families, they don't have the 20 minutes that it might take, especially at the beginning of the year, and so parking and walking up is fine, as long as their child is able to independently, kind of go across the street. This morning, it was a little bit like perfect storm. There was this child that had been doing so well and ran across on their own, but as soon as they did, this other child turned around and smacked him in the face, and then they were crying, the other child was crying, which made 2 other children cry. It's like, oh, darn, like it was starting off so well. Sometimes that happens too, yeah.
So, walk with our children to school?
Yeah.
How would that go?
Yeah, so our grandson, our son-in-law does that as well, lives over here in Ashbury. And so I don't know which way you're walking from, but usually you'll just find yourself on the sidewalk, whichever direction, if you're going towards early ed. And then they'll say, yeah, come on, the adults that are there will tell them to come on forward, and then they'll just walk on in from themselves by then. So somewhere near the cones, there's 4 cones out there, so whichever direction you're coming from, they usually stop at where that cone is, after the cars have stopped, and then they'll walk from there. Does that help? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
What is considered late? Because a couple of days, I think we were getting adjusted, but we were still in line and it was 8:25 and I was just wondering, is Narada late for this class?
Right.
So how does that work, like when you're in a circle, in a queue of cars? How does
You
that
don't need to worry about it. As long as the adults are still out there and there's still a stream of cars, don't worry about being late. Once there's the stream is gone, then the adults then will go in. That's when, the typical child then will come up to the front to go in, except for early ed. But either way, you just call
I
us.
was just concerned.
Yeah.
Okay.
It gets quicker. It just takes a little bit, for everyone to get kind of in the rhythm.
It's getting better as the days
Yeah.
progressing.
Yeah, it is.
She's actually in 3 car lengths.
Yeah.
She's an early ed, 6 to 9 and 9 to 12.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So any
She-
suggestions you have?
So
please
there's no
share.
easy way to
See
do
them all.
that. You're doing good. You get all three of these. Yeah.
7:40, be in line.
I've
and
seen
then-
I've seen you
Is that the
out
sweet
there.
spot, 7:40?
7:40.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one more question. So, and for birthday Thursday as well, to bring like the rainbows and stuff that you wanted, you just send them out of the car or in a bag? Or
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they can carry it by themselves, sometimes they cannot, and then the adult will just take them. So there's usually more of us out there during those mornings, and so they'll just help to get them in their studio. Yeah, no worries. Great questions. Thank you for sharing. And then it just depends, we said being on time, you know, it is hard sometimes for children with, if they have missed the car line, and then they're walking in a different spot, like that could throw them off for an hour or two, or for the whole day. So, you know, the best we can be, and we're all doing the best we can, but the best we can be and consistent with that, the better off their day will go, usually. You can move when you're ready. Yeah. Other ways to stay connected, so you'll have 4 parent partner conferences a year, so you just had the first one, and there's another one in November, February, and May. We do not encourage you to wait and hold all your questions or concerns or comments until those days. Those are just time, oftentimes your child's involved in that. There's always kind of a private time to talk without your child there, but your child's involved in that. And we want this to be kind of a collaborative process. If you come with your 5 questions, we may not even get through all of them because they have an agenda too. So, and the child has a presentation as they get older to do. So please feel free to reach out to the teacher at any time. Oftentimes you'll want to say something to them at drop off and pick up, and if you were looking at the bigger picture, you'd be like, these people are miraculous, that they're supporting these 100 kids going home right now, all at the same time. So drop off and pick up is a harder time to communicate, but just you can email and say, when's a good time for me to chat? I do need like 10 minutes, you know, or 5 minutes just to understand a few things that my child shared, and when would be a good time to do that. Substitute workshop we talked about. Child's Work Night comes on October 24th. It's really beautiful. It's for the 3 to 12-year-old environment. It's a time for them to kind of give you lessons or show you the lessons they've learned. And so we really ask you, like, sit on your hands, just be, you know, present and watch and observe. Try not to give them any feedback. Like, to see a child, like, build up the confidence to do something that feels really hard. And then we as the adults go, so what does this mean? What is 6 + 7? And they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? So, and we could talk about all that in more detail if you want to know, but it really is a beautiful time to just watch them, to see how they do, you know? And sometimes I've seen a child like sit and just turn the globe for 20 minutes while their parents were there. Then they were finished, you know? Like that's all they could do on this time. That was what they mustered up, so. We talked about read emails, the family handbook. We really do go through the family handbook every single year, page by page, sentence by sentence, to try to make it as supportive and informative as possible. Our blog that we have, Inform Montessori, there are lots of neat workshops we've done in the past that you might find helpful. There's some great ones on discipline, if that's something that you're supporting. So feel free to just look at that. You can search up in the search bar. Ask questions. You won't hurt our feelings. We won't be unkind to your child if you're upset. You know, like we want to hear from you. We want to be, to help. We learn each time we hear from somebody. They have a question or they make a comment. Like that's helpful to us too. So please do that. Who's heard of Conmigo? So Conmigo is a new program that we're using this year for 9 to 12-year-olds. So in the 4th through 5th, 6th level, all the way through high school. And if you were part of the parent tech talk that we're going to be having, we'll talk some about Conmigo. But if you remember Saul Kahn, who started Khan Academy, so he came up with Conmigo. It's like all of the children from that 9-year-old and up will have personal robots to help them with their work. So if you're worried and weary about AI, I will tell you that most of our staff is too. And in addition to that, what Conmigo has done is taking all the best parts of the AI world, we think, what we've learned, and like not allowed some of the other pieces. So it's like a controlled AI setting. So, and it's like, if you've heard the term Socratic tutor. So if, we'll go back to Algebra 2, if a young person is struggling with Algebra 2 and they put the problem in the, the chat box with their robot and says, I don't know how to do this. Conmigo is not going to say, first do this, then do that, then do that. Instead, a Socratic tutor would say things like, ooh, you're doing a linear equation with fractions. Wow, what do you think you'll do first? They'll be like, I don't know what to do first. Well, what do you think you want to try to do first? Sometimes people start with, PEMDAS, or they do this or that. Which are you going to do? And so it just keeps asking questions and giving feedback as they move through the process, so that hopefully they have those aha moments. That's why, right? So anyway, if you have kids at that level, they'll be acclimating to this over time, and it is a great process for them to do for work at home. And so just play with the robot with them. Ask some questions. It will write a story with them. It'll be a literary character. Peter Pan. It'll be someone that's real. So and they're having a conversation with them and writing a biography. So they can be in that person's voice. They'll write every other sentence. You write a sentence. The robot will write a sentence. There's lots of ways to go about it. So we believe it's going to be life-changing, for schools, and our school specifically as Montessorians, because we think it's going to promote more and more curiosity and interest in sticking with hard things. Study the Montessori method, our school philosophy, and we talked about the Parent Tech Talk on the first Tuesday of the month. See, there it is. It'll keep showing up. We'll keep going. I could talk all night, everybody. So. Here's some of the resources that we talked about. Karina, who was here earlier, and I think they're somewhere out there. Yes. On that table. There are some magnets if you want them for the car. There are some Montessori 101 books if you didn't make it to open house and you need one, or you have another part of your family that needs one. And then there's this list of books with the actual ISBN, am I saying that right? ISBN number, so you can find the book at your favorite bookstore. But these are all great ideas. And if you want, what specifically, which one of these should I start with if I want to know this or that? Feel free to email me. Fondra, and all of us are shiningminds.com. Here's some community engagement things, kind of some things that are coming up. So one of the components is the natural playground. So we have families that are ambassadors to the natural playground, and they take a day during the weekend, let your kids play, and then you might put some rocks back to where they go, or you might move some mulch over to where it is, or water a bush that's new, etc. So there's some spots still left for the natural playground ambassadors. We have performances. Last year we had performances at all of the age levels 9 to 12 and up that did plays, and one was written for the kids. And so anyway, very, very cool type things. Community pantry. Is everyone familiar with community pantry? Do you know where that is? Kind of. So if you look at the White House up on the hill, there's some barns next to it, and then there's a little building called the community pantry. The little White House is the toddler program. And so we started that during the pandemic, and so it's all donated foods, and it's open during the week, but we need people to help keep it stocked and keep it clean and do inventory and so forth. So that would be a great way for you and your family to get involved. Islands Occupation, so they run businesses, our 12 to 14 age level, and the 14 age level a little bit different ways, but they'll have different sales. That's what this is right now going on that picture, is them selling their gardening or woodworking or fiber arts items. 9 to 12 does different big projects and exhibitions. 6 to 9 and 9 to 12 will all be in the CASA at some point this year doing an exhibition. Maybe they're working on an exhibition of creative things that they're doing, or arts or science. And so you'll be welcome to come in to the CASA and go around and see their thing, as well as other children in their level or class. So those are really cool. And then it's ways you can support, volunteer and subbing, of course, yay! And then donations, pavers, some families give the community pantry, they just go to the wish list on Amazon and buy groceries, for once a month to be delivered. And so those are all really, really helpful things. We're on all the social media. I know nothing about it. Portland knows all the things about it. And then we have Spirit Wear, which will be coming out tomorrow. So if you saw the staff shirts, and there's a takeoff of the staff shirt with just a little bit different wording for the children and teens. And so you'll be able to order spirit wear, which we really encourage when kids are doing walking trips or going out trips on buses and so forth as well. Any questions, comments about any of that? Okay. And these are just things that we've kind of already talked about. There is a place on our website when you go to the website and hit current families, you can log your volunteer hours. You might be taking things home from the studio and cutting them up from being laminated. Or we have parents that are signed up to come and vacuum really good the room once a week or once a month. And so those are things that you can do. We'll, obviously we have this parent tech talk that's starting. Sorry. I can't even take it out. All right. Here you go. Questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody have anything else? Anything we didn't talk about that you're curious about? Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll stick around. Thank you. What was your name again? Cameron. Thank you, Cameron, for doing this. Thank you for taking the time out and being a part of this. And we'll stick around for a little bit if you have any other questions or comments. Thank you so much.